Roger glanced around the desert once more. Nothing but the cloudy sky and the sand scattering in the wind. With nothing else to do, he checked his magazine, already knowing it was full. Adjusting his helmet, he sighed and turned back to face Elliot. What a waste of time. It's hot as hell in this uniform. I fucking hate being deployed out here. Hell, the sand's more of a threat than anything I've seen so far. Roger picked up a glove full of the yellowish dust, letting it slip between his fingers. Yeah, if there were any actual threats out here, well, I can't remember the last time we actually saw anything. Elliot replied, staring off into the horizon, his visor dampening the bright sunshine. His heavy boots were sinking slightly into the ground, causing him to constantly have to reposition his feet. Me neither. Still better than just sticking around back at base getting yelled at by Sergeant Brills. Elliot narrowed his eyes. Hills. It's Sergeant Hills. Right. The sun beat down heavily on the pair as they moved onwards, barely bothering to check their surroundings. The landscape was almost completely flat, not a single incline in sight, apart from a cluster of curved dunes laying in the distance. Some guys were talking about this place, Elliot spoke up. What'd they say? It was some weird conspiracy theory kind of story. You see, allegedly, the army developed some weird cyber robot thing trying to make the ultimate soldier. Like, in the movies, like The Thing. They said it was like a synth from Fallout or The Terminator. Exposed wires, metal plating, in the shape of a human, right? Yeah, go on. So, they made the frame of this thing and gave it consciousness. And they wanted to give it emotions, too, as a test before they made the organs and such. To try to make it as close to a human as they could, so it would just blend in. They also gave it a bunch of special abilities, like superpowers. Nobody knew what kind, but there were a lot of suggestions from everyone. Stuff like laser vision and secret machine guns hidden in its arms. Well, that sounds like a load of shit to me. Soldiers are always making up stuff to entertain themselves. Yeah, but here's the thing. When they gave it emotions, they went too far. Ended up making it too real. So it didn't want to fight and stuff, it just wanted a normal life. And before they could disassemble it and start over again, it ran off into the desert. Well, some of the guys said they saw it the other day, moping around in its metal frame. Well, maybe we can catch a glimpse, make this deployment useful. Let's head over to the dunes. There might be a few hostiles camping there anyway. Nodding, Elliot walked calmly by Roger's side, noting an increasingly ominous feeling as the dunes moved closer. They were mostly smooth and curvy, with some large chunks of rock scattered around, poking up from the sand. Roger headed up to the top of one of the slopes, staring out at the vista. A small opening was poking out from the side of one of the dunes, leading into a cavern of some sort. Intrigued, Elliot stepped inside. It took a few seconds of adjustment before his eyes could make out anything. The cavern walls were covered in bizarre scratchings, stretching out across the ceiling. Strange footprints were etched into the sand where Elliot's boot lay, not like that of another soldier or animal. Elliot traced his hand across the marks. The longer he looked, the more similar they looked to words or phrases. He could just make one of them out. Lonely. So lonely. Taking a step back, Elliot gasped, glancing around the walls once more. It was the same message carved everywhere it would fit. Lonely. So lonely. Elliot rushed out of the cavern, that previous sense of dread now encompassing his entire body. Roger? Roger's arms were twitching slightly. His face pointed upwards to the sky. The skin from his legs began to peel back, exposing a chrome-colored surface. Within a few seconds, his body had shed like snakeskin, his uniform dropping to the sand, and standing in his place, a grayish android, the sunshine beaming off its polished torso. Why did I even try? The robot's voice was metallic, like a text-to-speech engine. Elliot's mouth dropped open in shock. Roger had a family. I could feel his memory of them in the back of my consciousness. It's a side effect of the process. In taking over a body, I gain access to their memories. Roger had a wife and kid. Another feeling I'd truly never know. The android continued. The saggy mound of Roger's wilted flesh rolled slowly down the slope, piling up at Elliot's feet. Elliot felt as if he would vomit. I can only host the appearance of a body once it's dead. That's how I was programmed. It was an infiltration tactic by my designers. I guess it did work after all. Roger was dead before you were even deployed with him. I found him alone in the desert yesterday, separated from the other soldiers. He was a goner anyways, I suppose, dying of heat stroke and dehydration. It still doesn't make me feel better. There was a long pause. The wind began to whistle through the dunes. I just wanted to pretend. Pretend I was human. Pretend I had friends, connections, people to talk to and listen to. There's nothing to do, no one to talk to out here. They hurt me, Elliot. They broke me apart and built me up again time after time until they got me just right. The scientists, the doctors. I can never go back. I'd be scrapped for parts. Elliot aimed his rifle directly at the android, emptying his entire magazine into the creature. The deafening sounds of gunshots echoed through the desert, carrying on for miles. I'm bulletproof. Go ahead. Kill me. The android's wary voice continued. You aren't the first to try. Bullets bounced off the machine's metal plating like hail. Exasperated, Elliot pointed his weapon down, staring blankly at Roger's remains. He was my friend. Think yourself lucky for what you had. The joy of friendship is unknown to me. Elliot scowled. What are you? I mean, what the fuck even are you? The machine turned to face Elliot, exposing its bulbous, robotic eyes. Its face was expressionless, unable to convey even a single emotion. You really have no idea, don't you? You're barely less of a machine than I am. Want me to show you? Slowly, the robot stepped over a piece of Roger's uniform. Its movements were janky and unnatural. A quiet whir escaped its body every time it took a step. Before Elliot had a chance to react, it had snatched a handgun from the sand and shot a bullet straight through Elliot's temple. Elliot stumbled backwards, collapsing face first onto a rock. Stunned, Elliot gradually pushed himself back onto his feet. He was alive. Reaching a shaky hand to his head, he could feel two sparkling wires poking out from his skin where the bullet had gone through. On the exit wound, he found a large computer chip. A mechanical voice echoed throughout his head. Structural damage detected. Repairing wounds. A surge of unimaginable pain built up rapidly in Elliot's temple. He screamed violently, a gush of blood flowing down his face. The opening was burning itself shut, the broken skin fixing itself back together on both ends. Elliot gritted his teeth, on the verge of tears. A few more seconds passed, and the injury had completely healed. You're a prototype, like some of the others. I could tell by the glint in your eye. All prototypes have the glint. You're part human, part machine, Elliot. Roger wasn't a prototype, but I reckon he would have become one eventually, had he survived a few more weeks at base. What the hell did they do to me? Elliot panted, his hands clutched onto either sides of his head. What they're going to do to everyone now that their little project with me turned out so badly. Why make one ultimate soldier when you can make millions through the miracle of cybernetics? Of course, you aren't meant to find out. There's a device in your head that deletes the memory of seeing the wires in computer chips if you get injured in the field. It works for seeing other people's injuries as well. I just shot straight through it. If I had shot you in the leg, you'd have forgotten there was any injury at all by now. Elliot fumbled around with his holster, eventually pulling out a rigid knife from his waist. With little hesitation, he stabbed the knife deep into his arm, ripping open the flesh like paper. A series of flashing lights and green cards exposed themselves, coated in a slimy layer of broken skin. He dropped to his knees, crying out once more in agony. What am I? In a psychotic rage, he dropped the knife and began to rip out the hardware, tossing it carelessly through the air. Metal wiring and rugged chips flew out of his forearm, scattering onto the sand. And soon, only an empty space was left, devoid of bone or muscle. Kill me. Kill me, Elliot begged the robot, groveling at its metallic feet. No, it answered, looking down upon Elliot with pity. Jabbering like a lunatic, Elliot leaped off the top of the slope, landing on his neck with a savage crunch. The robot gazed down at his broken body as the sand and the wind slowly piled on top of the soldier, the desert swallowing him whole.